Imagine your government announced tomorrow that it was going to spend the next 30 years building a giant tomb. Not a hospital, not a highway, not even a palace, a grave. Most of us would probably ask the same question. Why? Yet 4,500 years ago, an entire civilization looked at that idea and thought, of course. Nobody protested. Nobody thought it was strange. In fact, they believed it might be the most important project in the country. Which raises a much more interesting question. What did they understand that we don't? Because today, the Great Pyramid is treated like one giant mystery. It's been photographed millions of times, turned into wallpapers, and featured in almost every Ancient Mysteries documentary ever made. We stare at it and ask the same questions. How did they move stones that heavy? Who actually built it? And let's be honest, at least once, you've probably wondered if aliens had something to do with it. But the people who built the pyramid would have found those questions a little strange, because to them, the real mystery wasn't how to build it. It was why anyone wouldn't. To understand that, we have to forget almost everything we think we know about ancient Egypt. So let's rewind about 4,500 years, long before Rome, long before Greece reached its golden age, long before the Bible was even written. Egypt was one of the richest kingdoms on earth. Its secret wasn't gold, it was the Nile. Every year, the river flooded its banks, leaving behind rich black soil that fed millions of people. To the Egyptians, the Nile wasn't just a river, it was the reason civilization existed. And at the center of that civilization stood one man, Pharaoh Khufu. Today, we might call him a king. The Egyptians would have thought that description was far too small. A king rules people. Pharaoh was believed to help keep the universe running. If you've ever played a video game where one character keeps the entire world alive, that's basically how Egyptians saw their pharaoh. As long as he ruled, the sun would rise, the Nile would flood, the harvest would come, order would defeat chaos. But there was one problem. Even Pharaoh could die. And that created a terrifying question. What happens to the world when the man holding it together is suddenly gone? The Egyptians believed death wasn't the end. It was a journey, but only if everything went exactly right. The body had to survive. The rituals had to be performed. The tomb had to be protected. If any part of that failed, the consequences weren't just personal. People believed the balance of the entire kingdom could be at risk. So solving Pharaoh's death wasn't just about saving one man. It was about protecting Egypt itself. And that's when someone had an idea. That would become one of the greatest construction projects in human history. Build something that could last forever. Imagine you're one of Pharaoh Khufu's advisors. Your job is simple. Figure out how to help the most important man on earth live forever. Not metaphorically, literally. Now remember, the Egyptians already knew how to build tombs. They'd been doing it for centuries. Small ones, hidden ones, simple ones. But there was a problem. Tombs had a terrible habit of attracting thieves. Think about it. If you buried someone with enough gold to make them rich in the afterlife, you'd also be advertising the biggest treasure chest in the country. Sooner or later, someone would come digging. And if the tomb was broken into, the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife might be ruined. So the question wasn't simply, how do we bury the king? It became, how do we protect him forever? Some historians believe the answer evolved over generations. Earlier pharaohs built rectangular tombs called mastabas. Then came the step pyramid of Djoser, almost like someone stacking giant stone boxes on top of each other. It was revolutionary, but Khufu wanted something even greater. Not just another tomb, a monument no one could ignore. Something so enormous that it would declare one message to everyone who saw it. This king was different. Whether the idea came from Khufu himself, his architects, or generations of engineers refining earlier designs, we'll probably never know. But someone imagined something the world had never seen before: a mountain built by human hands. And once Pharaoh approved the idea, there was only one problem left. How do you convince an entire nation to build it? The answer is surprisingly simple. You don't. Because the Egyptians didn't believe they were building a monument. They believed they were protecting the future of their entire kingdom. Imagine your government announcing tomorrow, "We're starting the biggest construction project in human history." Most people would ask, how much is this going to cost? Ancient Egyptians asked something completely different. When do we start? Because this wasn't just Pharaoh's project, it was everyone's. Every year, the Nile flooded for several months. Farming stopped, fields disappeared underwater, and suddenly, thousands of farmers had time on their hands. Instead of sitting at home, many worked on the pyramid. Modern archaeology suggests these weren't masses of chained slaves, as Hollywood likes to show. Many were skilled workers, builders, stone cutters, boat crews, bakers, brewers, doctors. Entire villages were built just to feed and house them. Imagine building a modern city whose only purpose was helping construct a single building. That's essentially what Egypt did. Meanwhile, boats constantly sailed along the Nile, carrying limestone, granite, timber, food, and supplies. From above, Egypt would have looked like one giant construction site. And year after year, the pyramid kept growing. Children were born, grew up, had families of their own, and the pyramid was still under construction. It wasn't simply a building anymore. It had become part of everyday life. Then, finally, after decades of work, it was finished. But here's the part most people never realize. The pyramid we see today isn't the pyramid the Egyptians saw. After decades of work, it was finally finished. But here's the thing. The Great Pyramid the Egyptians celebrated isn't the one we see today. Forget the rough, dusty stones tourists climb over today. Imagine something completely different. The entire pyramid was covered in smooth white limestone, polished until it reflected sunlight almost like a giant mirror. On a bright afternoon, it could probably be seen from miles away. Some historians believe the very top was covered with gold, or electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver. Picture the morning sun hitting that golden tip. It wouldn't have looked like a pile of rocks. It would have looked like a mountain of light rising out of the desert. Imagine walking across endless sand and seeing something shining on the horizon. Not a city, not a mountain, a monument built by human hands. For the people of Egypt, this wasn't just architecture. It was proof that Pharaoh's journey had been prepared, that the gods still watched over Egypt, that order still ruled over chaos. Every time they looked toward Giza, they weren't just seeing a building, they were seeing certainty. But eventually, the day everyone had been preparing for finally arrived. Pharaoh died. This was the moment the pyramid had been built for, not the day construction began, the day it finally had a purpose. The moment Pharaoh died, one of the most elaborate rituals in history began. His body was carefully mummified, not simply to preserve it, but because Egyptians believed the soul needed a body to recognize. Think of it like keeping the original key to a house. Without it, coming home becomes difficult. Food, furniture, jewelry, boats, statues, everything Pharaoh might need in the next life was placed inside his tomb. Because death to the Egyptians wasn't the end, it was more like moving to another world. The pyramid wasn't just protecting a body, it was protecting a journey. And if that journey succeeded, people believed Egypt itself would continue to prosper. The Nile would flood, the crops would grow, the gods would remain pleased. For generations, that belief held the kingdom together. But time has a way of ignoring even the strongest beliefs, because while the Egyptians saw the pyramid as sacred, later civilizations saw something very different: opportunity. Imagine hearing about a building filled with gold, precious jewelry, rare treasures, built for the richest ruler on earth. How long do you think it would stay untouched? Not very long. Long before modern archaeologists ever arrived, grave robbers were already breaking into royal tombs. The Great Pyramid was no exception. By the time later kings ruled Egypt, it's likely many of its treasures had already disappeared. Then came new empires: the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. Each inherited the pyramids, not as new buildings, but as ancient monuments. When Julius Caesar saw the Great Pyramid, it was already older than the Roman Republic. When Cleopatra stood beneath it, she was looking at a building already 2,500 years old. And when Jesus was born, people already thought of the pyramid the same way we think about Stonehenge today: ancient, mysterious, a relic from another age. The centuries weren't finished with it yet. Its smooth white limestone casing was gradually stripped away, especially after earthquakes damaged parts of it. Much of that beautiful stone was reused to build mosques, palaces, and houses in medieval Cairo. Its golden cap vanished. Its treasures disappeared. Even Pharaoh Khufu's mummy was gone. The greatest tomb ever built couldn't protect everything it was meant to. And yet, somehow, it still survived. Here's the irony. Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid so that he would live forever. But today, almost everything that belonged to him is gone. His golden treasures? Gone. His furniture? Gone. His jewelry? Gone. Even his mummy has never been found. The one thing that was supposed to be temporary, his body, disappeared. The one thing that was supposed to protect it is still standing. For more than 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid has watched civilizations come and go. The Persian Empire, Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire, the birth of Christianity, the rise of Islam, the Ottoman Empire, the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, the invention of airplanes, the internet, even the smartphone you're probably watching this on. The pyramid has been there for all of it. Think about that. Entire civilizations have lived, reached their peak, collapsed, and become history. The pyramid barely moved? Maybe that's the closest thing humanity has ever built to eternity. But perhaps the strangest part isn't that it survived. It's why it survived. For thousands of years, people have asked the same question. How did they build the Great Pyramid? It's a fascinating question, but maybe it's not the most important one. The harder question is this: why did an entire civilization believe it had to be built? Because once you understand that, the pyramid stops looking like an engineering mystery and starts looking like something else, a belief made out of stone. To us, it's one of the greatest construction projects ever completed. To the ancient Egyptians, it was insurance. Insurance that the sun would rise tomorrow, that the Nile would flood again, that order would triumph over chaos, that life itself would continue. We no longer believe the world depends on a pyramid, but we still build monuments. We still build skyscrapers, launch spacecraft, create technologies, leave behind names, buildings, and ideas that we hope will outlive us. Maybe humanity hasn't changed as much as we like to think. The Egyptians just built their dream a little bigger. And perhaps that's why, 4,500 years later, the Great Pyramid still doesn't feel like a ruin. It feels like a message, left behind by people who wanted to be remembered forever, and somehow, they got their wish.